Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ here to talk a little Carolina basketball, a little preview kind of podcast, for lack of a better word, looking ahead to Carolina's two games this week against Notre Dame and UVA. But before we dive into that, I want to blast our podcast sponsor on this one, Rogue Apothecary. They specialize in top shelf family grown hemp products. Like I said, whatever you're into, Delta 8, CBD, whether you like tinctures, oils, gummies, whatever it may be, check Rogue Apothecary out. Link to their website is in the description and below. You can also save using the promo code TARHEELS10. So make sure you check them out. Really good products. I know AJ's used it. Uses some of the
last night
as well. I'm about to say you probably needed it last night.
I got in last night. I got home about 10:45. Reintroduced myself to my wife and daughter, and then they went to bed, and I had to work and write a story and get some stuff up and edit David's piece, the film review, and crunch some more basketball numbers. Next thing you know, it's like 1:30. I'm like, I got a full day tomorrow. A little bit of CBD oil underneath the tongue, and AJ sleeping was out like a baby. Light.
I love it, man. Yeah,
sleeping like a baby.
Yeah,
probably snoring up a storm like Fred Flintstone when the roof would go up a little bit when he was snoring. I'm sure AJ was doing that, rocking the neighborhood last night.
Completely knocked you out. That's what I'm saying, and that's why those kind of products are good, especially this for people like you in the journalism industry trying to go to sleep.
Anybody, man.
Yeah, you need that kind of stuff. I mean, if anybody's having trouble sleeping, want to just relax a little bit, take the edge off a little bit, CBD products through Rogue Apothecary, really, really good. So check them out. Like I said, link to their website is in the description below. Make sure you use that promo code TARHEELS10 as well to save. But AJ, let's look ahead real quick. Carolina obviously coming off a 91-65 win over Boston College in Chestnut Hill on Sunday, proving to 10-3 overall, 2-0 in the ACC. And Wednesday, they're at Notre Dame for a late night tip-off on that one, and then Saturday at home against the Virginia Cavaliers. We talked about a little bit in three things yesterday, but two very winnable games coming up this week. I think it's in a lot of ways a very favorable January for the Tar Heels. It's a couple of tough games in there, but looking at it, it's a lot of games you would expect Carolina to win if they can keep playing at a high level like they have over recent weeks. So just overall thoughts going in. We can start with that Notre Dame game. We don't want to look back too ahead, but just going into that Notre Dame game on Wednesday, tough opponent. I know Notre Dame's kind of been up and down at times this year. Not a great team, but definitely a team in South Bend that could cause Carolina some issues. What are your thoughts about kind of where the Tar Heels are at right now going up to South Bend on Wednesday night?
Well, I'm going to judge this team based on the challenge that Huber laid out on Saturday. He told them, he has a 3-word motto for the team, energy, effort, and toughness.
Yeah.
And that hasn't always been there. That wasn't there against Tennessee. It wasn't there against Kentucky. I think that it wasn't entirely there against some of the patsies that they played in the non-conference schedule. It must be there now. So he said, his understanding, and he's been told by people who study psyche and that kind of stuff, that you do something for 30 days, you do it daily for 30 days, it can become a habit. That's how you make it become a habit, right? Yeah. So he told them he doesn't want to have to utter the need for effort, energy, effort, and toughness for 30 days. So that was what Sunday was all about at Boston College. And they looked a little sluggish early on, but they hadn't played 12 days, but it wasn't because they didn't have effort or energy or toughness. I mean, they had 3 or 4 offensive rebounds in that little stretch. So they were getting after it. They just didn't convert some shots. Once they did, boom, everything connected because they had the right mindset, the right disposition, and they had a good verve going, okay? So they need to take that and move it to South Bend, and then they need to have that at home when UVA comes to town and all that. So Hubert said it's a 30-day challenge. So for the 30 days, I guess it should have been a 31-day challenge. It's January is a 31-day month, but up through January 30th, I'm going to look at that every time I see the team.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I'm going to look at. And Jacob, you know that in the preview podcast we did last week that nobody ever saw because we finished it right before the Virginia Tech game.
Literally right.
Postponed. Yeah. One of the things we talked about, like a major point of emphasis, and it was in my 5 keys to Boston College, was creating your own energy. They have to do that even at home because sometimes the Dean Dome is not a great environment. And really, they shouldn't have to thrive on the environment. They shouldn't play ebb and flow based on what the environment is. It needs to be burning from within. That's what Hubert's trying to coach. into these guys right now. So that's a long way of getting to South Bend, but I think that's going to be important in South Bend because there might not be a great atmosphere there either. I don't think the students will be back yet.
Probably
and the
not,
students
no.
are a big part of the atmosphere at Notre Dame. I've done several games there, and generally it's a pretty good crowd, especially if the Irish are playing well. 2 years ago when Leshevsky beat Carolina on a buzzer beater, that was a fantastic crowd, and that was a crappy Carolina team. That uniform shows up, people get a little bit jazzed up, but there won't be students there. Who knows what the weather's going to be like going up there, which can affect the crowd even in a place like that. But the bottom line is Carolina's got to do it from within. It's got to be something that is in them before they run out of the locker room onto the floor.
Yeah.
Before they go out and do shoot around with their undergarment, they have those undershirts that they wear for shoot around and stuff. And Brady Manick has the loose navy blue T-shirt, which is totally different than everybody else. Yeah. If you check out our videos on Twitter, you'll see that it has to be there when they're doing that. I sensed it was there yesterday. It's one of the reasons I go down to the baseline and shoot pictures and shoot the clips, and just watch the guys because I'm trying to get a feel for where they are. And it was clearly there yesterday. So if they have that going into South Bend, Jacob, that's half the battle because they have more talent than Notre Dame. They're better than Notre Dame. And I think that, the way that they could beat you from the perimeter, the way they could beat you in the interior, the way they could beat you with the drives, all of that are things that Notre Dame can't entirely match. Now, Notre Dame could still beat them. I think Notre Dame could beat them fairly convincingly.
Yeah,
they got some nice players. Mike Bray, his teams will step up every once in a while and play really well. And they've been playing better of late. But the Tar Heels should win this game. We can get a little bit more into this game here in the next couple of minutes. But I'm really looking forward just to seeing what their disposition is, because to me, that's the story of January. If they meet Hubert's demand, his challenge this month, when they get into February, they're going to be a much, much better team and a consistent team, and one that I think could be interesting on the national landscape.
Yeah, most definitely. And just looking at Notre Dame a little bit more in depth, they've won 3 straight games. Last win coming over Pittsburgh, 68-67 on December 28th. So it's been about 5 or 6 days before, it gap between those 2 games in which they haven't played. So, but Notre Dame, a team that's kind of been up and down. They got a loss to Indiana on their schedule. They obviously beat Kentucky earlier in the year in Kentucky. Lost to Boston College by 16 points, who looked atrocious against the Tar Heels. I know COVID and everything like that played a big factor into that on Sunday, and the reason which Boston College didn't play very well. But still, this is an interesting Notre Dame team. Even looking more, they've got a loss to St. Mary's on their schedule as well. So this is like a very up and down Notre Dame.
St. Mary's is good though. St. Mary's is good.
Solid program for sure. But you got a team in here which is won 3 straight, like I said, has some kind of suspect losses in there, has some impressive wins as well. It's a team, like you said, that I think can cause Carolina some issues. And I like what you said about it. I think it's just up for Carolina to like you said, play with what they're trying to set in terms of having that energy, having that passion, and just coming out and taking care of business. Because we talked about this in the past, but this is a Carolina program that's obviously one of the greatest in college basketball histories. A lot of the times when you got as much talent as Carolina does, it's just about taking care of yourself and you playing to the highest standard that you can. And I think it's the same thing going into this game, because I think going to South Bend, picking up a win against Notre Dame, and then coming back home and playing a UVA team that's really struggled this year, Carolina's got to be feeling good going into it. But I do agree, this is a Notre Dame team that for sure can beat the Tar Heels. But I think it's more about Carolina taking care of themselves, because I think if Carolina plays as well as they can, which they haven't done at times this year, and 2 games sticking out in particular, in South Bend on Wednesday, I think it's very safe to say that Carolina can, walk away from that game with a relatively comfortable win against, like I said, a Notre Dame team that has got some good wins, but for the most part has been kind of up and down for most of the season so far.
Yeah, but I'm going to judge Notre Dame more in the last 5 games because they've changed their approach a little bit. Notre Dame previously under Mike Bray, they loved to run, take quick shots.
Yeah.
They weren't always the best defensive team out there. You could get a lot of what you wanted against Notre Dame, and they were going to shoot threes and they were going to do all that stuff, and it's worked. He's had some damn good teams. Yeah. And he's had some teams that were entertaining, but they would lose. They'd go 500. They're a little bit different now. Their tempo, their adjusted tempo, the pace, according to KenPom, is number 281. So they're playing a lot slower. If you look at the scoring in their games, it's much lower than what we'd seen in the past. In fact, in these 5 games, this 5-game stretch, which they won 4 out of 5, I think they're only giving up like 62 points a game. And, the loss to Indiana. Indiana's a pretty good team that was in Indianapolis on a neutral floor. They beat Kentucky. They won at Pitt. And I don't care what anybody says, Pitt's terrible. But an ACC road win is an ACC road win. And if you're Notre Dame and you're changing approaches a little bit to more suit the talent that you have, winning a game, a month and a half into the season, any game and winning on the road is huge for your confidence. So they're going to be a confident group. They got some good players. Dane Goodwin is a good player. Blake Wesley's a really good freshman. He's going to be on the all-freshman team in the league. And, Leshevsky is a guy that has been a really nice player for him. He's like their 6th leading scorer. So they have some guys. And I think that there's a chance that Notre Dame might play better the rest of the way than they have so far. So Carolina is going to get a decent a bit of resistance on Wednesday night. But it goes back to what you just said, Jacob. You're 100% right. If Carolina has the right disposition and they check the boxes, they should have a good game. And they're going to have a chance to shoot a lot of threes, because one area Notre Dame's really struggling is three-point defense. They're ranked number 325 in the nation, three-point defense. So look what Carolina did Saturday. When those threes started falling, that's when they pulled away from BC. And they got the threes in transition. They got them in the secondary. It wasn't just – Hubert didn't have to run a lot of sets for them to get those looks, which is a really good sign. Because the more sets a coach has to run, that means that stuff's not clicking right. He's got to, he's trying to force good looks out of his team. But so much stuff was very natural and fluid on Sunday. They need to carry that over to Wednesday night. And if they get those kind of looks in South Bend, that'll be a really good sign, because Notre Dame's a much better team than BC, even though they lost to BC a couple weeks ago. And by the way, sidebar, I don't know the exact numbers, but BC hadn't practiced a whole lot recently. So there were other issues why the Eagles weren't very good. But I do think Notre Dame's a better team in spite of what happened in Chestnut Hill, which is why I said the Pitt game on the road is a good win for them, because any road win in the ACC for most of these teams is a really good win. So it's all about Carolina on Wednesday night. If the Tar Heels play to their potential and they have the right disposition and they meet Hubert's challenge, they'll win the game.
Most definitely. Is it – a little quick side note too, Notre Dame is 5-0 at home. I'd have to look and go in depth on who they've actually played at home, but would be Notre Dame's first loss at home if Carolina can go up there and beat them on Wednesday night. Let's switch the focus to UVA before we wrap this one up. We're not going to go this one too long. UVA sitting at 8-5 overall, 2-1 in the ACC. It's a UVA team that, from what we've seen from Tony Bennett since he's come in, just not a very good team. Team that really struggles scoring, which has been something that, Tony Bennett teams have kind of historically been known for because of how good they are on the defensive side of the ball and in the pace in which they play. But this is a UVA team that just isn't very good this year. Obviously, the last game on January 1st got a 5-point win over Syracuse. But before that, on December 22nd, lost to Clemson by 17 points. A little bit up and down in that respect. They beat Pittsburgh, by 1 point on December 3rd. So they've also lost to James Madison in that time span by 3 points. This is a Virginia team that's just historically, from what we've seen, like I said, from Tony Bennett teams, just a downer this year, for lack of a better word. So what I want to ask you, AJ, at home, weekend game, I mean, is it kind of the same thing again for Carolina that it is against Notre Dame? Have the right disposition, play how you're supposed to play, take care of yourself, and everything else will kind of fall into place. Is that kind of the mindset the Heels have to have just the whole week?
It is, but scouting that backline defense is crucial, and also psychologically. Virginia owns Carolina.
Yeah, I was about to say that was one thing I wanted to say.
They twist the Tar Heels into a knot and won't let go.
Yeah.
So we've seen Caleb and RJ, even some this year, kind of dribble into trouble, have problems recognizing things on defense, and it stagnates the entire offense. And this is the kind of UVA still playing that backline defense, right? They're still number 8 in the nation. They're number 8 in the nation scoring defense because of tempo. They're number 358 in tempo. And guess how many teams are in Division I? 358. They're dead last in tempo.
Jesus.
And part of that's because they got a lot of new parts. They lost 8 guys off last year's team. So, the UVA's offensive efficiency rates are usually very high. because it may be a pace that people don't like, but it is an acceptable brand of basketball to play because it's very effective.
Very effective, yeah.
And I actually have told people for years, when UVA is kind of clicking on offense, I love watching them because I love the way that everything is so synchronized with what they do. But this club hadn't looked like that. The two leading scorers are transfers. Jaden Gardner, the kid from East Carolina, Armand Franklin, a kid from Indiana, probably kicking himself in some ways that he left.
Yeah,
but they just never have looked in sync. A couple games you mentioned that I've watched them several times, and I've been blown away at how bad they've been. The Clemson game at home, well, the James Madison game, they had 14 points at halftime.
Yeah, that's just like
James Madison.
That's unbelievable.
The Clemson game at home, they had an 8-minute stretch in the first half in which they didn't score. And then they had a 16-minute stretch in the second half with one field goal.
Jesus.
And I talked to Brad Brown.
That's got to be a record or something.
And I talked to Brad. I've known Brad since he was the UNCW coach, and I talked to him back in October. And I say, "Hey, coach, so what are you guys looking like this year?" So, well, we got some shooters, but I'm a little concerned if we're going to be as good as we've been defensively. So, a team that maybe not be one of Brad's best defensive teams at Clemson completely shut down UVA in Charlottesville. So, and the Pitt game, UVA had to win essentially at the buzzer to beat Pitt at home, and Pitt's atrocious. So you could argue that UVA, Pitt, and BC are the three worst teams in the ACC. However, I think the psychological factor of Carolina against UVA, because there are some guys that have played against the Wahoos and have really struggled. I think that will be an interesting part of the challenge. And Hubert will say, look, don't worry about what's happened before. You can't do anything about it. And that wasn't you guys. That wasn't this team. That wasn't the 2021-22 Tar Heels. Dawson Garcia, he's got nothing to do with that stuff. Brady Maddock, he's got nothing to do with that stuff. And Caleb and RJ and all you guys, you only played them once. All right. Armando and Leaky, Armando's played them 3 times, and they had the buzzer beater loss at home when Walden THI hit that 3 from the corner, which was probably the most devastating loss that team experienced that year. And that includes even the Duke loss at home because they led that game the whole way. So I think that this is a game the Tar Heels need to win for a million different reasons. But one, just kind of get off that schneid a little bit against UVA. But the Wahoos are still pretty good defensively, but they're atrocious offensively. So the Tar Heels have a chance to not only win that game, maybe win convincingly, but it's going to challenge them with pace. It's going to challenge them with patience. It's going to challenge them with recognition. It's going to challenge them with dealing with something, a defensive approach that the opponent is wholly committed to. Boston College wasn't committed to anything defensively on Sunday. So as well as Carolina played, BC had a lot to do with that, but I'm not going to take anything away from the Tar Heels. That 30-day challenge was part of what we saw. So that needs to show up Wednesday in South Bend. That needs to show up Saturday afternoon home against UVA. And if the Tar Heels win these 2 games, they'll be 4-0 in the league, 3 of the wins on the road. And then they have a week off until Georgia Tech comes to town. I believe it's Georgia Tech comes down after that.
They're struggling.
And who knows? Who knows when the Virginia Tech game is going to be made up? I think Carolina needs that game because there aren't many resume-enhancing opportunities in this league, and that would be one of them. So they have a chance to be 4-0 going into another stretch where they can take some time and work on themselves.
Yeah, it's a big week for the Tar Heels. Like I said, you're not the 2 biggest opponents you've ever seen Carolina face, but 2 wins this week, I think, would, like you said, going into a kind of a week off for the Tar Heels. Then you face Georgia Tech, who's struggling this year as well. Carolina's already beat them down in Atlanta. You got to be feeling pretty good if you can come out with 2 wins this week. And
they can't afford to lose. And I'm sorry to jump in.
No, you're good. No,
at least I'm allowed one. It's like my mulligan. I'm allowed one a podcast.
It's hard not to over Zoom anyway.
Everybody had, my dad loves to tell me, it's too early to talk about the NCAA tournament. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. Not when the league sucks.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Because
there aren't many real good resume-enhancing wins. So what you want to do, if you're not going to be able to get a lot of Q1 and Q2 wins, you must avoid the Q3 losses and the Q4 losses. You have to avoid bad losses. So you got to win these games because I'm a firm believer right now, and people who want to peel away the onion on this, please do, because this is why I'm saying this. This club just needs to win. They need to win games and continue to play and get that chemistry going. I kind of wish for them that they had a game in between UVA and Georgia Tech because they need to get on the court every 3 or 4 days, play an opponent, win a game, move on to the next one, get that routine going. Mm-hmm. And but They can't do anything about the schedule. It is what it is. And who the hell knows that some of these games are going to go off the way Omicron's going. So, but they need to win, and they cannot afford to lose these kinds of games, because that's the kind of stuff that'll keep them out of the tournament. If they're sitting there, 1 week into March and the committee's evaluating them and they're saying, boy, man, they had some opportunities in November and December and didn't take advantage. And then in the league, you can't lose to Notre Dame, and you can't lose to this team, and you can't lose to State on the road and be an NCAA tournament team. They may look like one to our eyes, but if the paper doesn't say it, they're not going to get in. Mm-hmm. So they need to just win games, win, improve, meet Hubert's 30-day challenge, and they'll be in good shape when they head into February.
Yeah, most definitely. Good stuff, AJ. Good place to wrap this one up. Carolina set to play at Notre Dame on Wednesday, and UVA at home, 1 p.m. tip-off in Chapel Hill this weekend. So we'll see how the Tar Heels do. Big week coming up for them against some pretty favorable opponents. So 2 wins. Have the Tar Heels sitting at 4-0, 12-3 overall. You got to be feeling pretty good about that if you're Hubert Davis and the players. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, AJ will be up in South Bend. I'm actually supposed to be at the game on Saturday, the Virginia game this weekend. So Be good to be back in the Smith Center and check them out. But yeah, we'll see how the Tar Heels do. Make sure you guys keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your coverage leading up to the game, during the game, after the games. Busy time of year with basketball officially in full force now. So keep it locked to our YouTube channel as well. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. And if you think the Tar Heels are going to finish the week with 2 wins, go ahead and like this video below. As always, guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks.